BBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
10 minutes to 8 is the time, continuing to make life tough to feed the great Russian bear, from burgers now to aircraft. Russian aircraft belonging to certain individuals could be taken from the UK register. Here with details is keen aviator and Transport Secretary Grant Shapps. Mr. Shapps, what exactly is happening? Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, no, we've already acted day one to make sure that Aeroflot, commercial airlines, and even private jets couldn't come to the UK. What I've done in the last 24 hours is further closed off some potential loopholes where the aircraft itself might not be, for example, even on the Russian flag. But if they're carrying an oligarch, we are going to make sure that we act and potentially impound them. And that is really what we've done. We're going further on this because we want to make sure that we are closing off every avenue for Putin's war machine, including his oligarch friends.
Considerable relief could have been afforded to Ukraine if Poland's flight of MiG fighter jets had been handed over. I understand President Joe Biden is against that. Do you support the president, and what is the impact of that, Secretary of State?
I mean, look, this is an issue for the Polish, of course, and we'll support whatever choices the Polish make. They're very old allies of ours. They helped fight in the war alongside us, and many of them in the RAF, and we'll back whatever decision they make. Obviously, this is massive for the US and Poland together.
The Prime Minister has moved. We are going to end our need for Russian oil, but it's going to take possibly until the end of the year. In the US, it's going to take 45 days. Why the delay here, Secretary of State?
Yes, to put it into perspective, in Europe, it's going to take 8 years. So we are moving considerably faster than them. It's really to do with the level of reliance on Russian hydrocarbons, gas, oil, coal. Fortunately, not huge in this country. For example, none of our petrol actually comes from Russia. Some gas does, some other forms of oil do. So it's really just a question of removing it from our economy. Quite a lot of this is happening anyway. I banned Russian ships, for example, from British ports. We've seen cargoes turned away. I think there's just a period of adjustment required in order to pump up the amount of gas and oil available, not least from the North Sea, of course. So it's just a practicality, but we're moving really very fast on this. As I say, Europe will take as much as 8 years to do the same.
The impact, of course, is probably going to be felt by all my listeners and your constituents. We are going to be paying more, I would imagine, at the pumps for our unleaded or our diesel. What relief might the Chancellor offer in his budget?
Yeah, and look, I mean, we are not, unfortunately for us, in a position of having air raids and seeing literally our children die on the street. The terrible pictures we're seeing in Ukraine. Everyone wants to help. We need to stem the flow of Putin's gas and oil, blood money from funding his war machine. So I think it's right to cut off their oil. But there is an impact. It's a global impact. We've already seen very high price rises. The government, of course, has already knocked about £15 per tank per average family car off the cost of fuel by freezing fuel duty for all of these years. And for home energy, announced a package which amounts to some £20 billion of different types of support for cost of living issues. So, I'll leave the rest of it to the Chancellor, but I think the British people understand that Putin's actions do have an impact and on our cost of living, unfortunately.
How close are we as Secretary of State for Transport, Mr. Shapps? How close are we to £2 a litre?
Well, look, I can't predict any more than you can where petrol prices go. I hear some analysts say we've already seen quite a lot of the increase in prices feed through. On the other hand, who knows quite what.
What do you think by the end of the year?
I genuinely don't know, Nick. Right. I mean, you're asking me the same question in different ways to try. That's to
exactly right.
To try to, which is your job.
Well, let me try indeed. Let me try this a different way. Okay. Lastly, on this issue, and it'll probably turn out that you have an electric one. But the last time you put fuel in your car, can you remember what you paid per litre?
Okay, you're right. I have an electric
there we
one.
Go. How did I know?
So yes, considerably less. And of course, we're seeing. I saw actually last month 1 in 6 cars were electric.
All right.
People often say, well, they cost more to purchase. They also cost less to run, much less to run. And of course, that differential is closing with the cost of fuel going up.
Just finally to the point as regards Russian aircraft, you may be aware that officials were holding a jet thought to belong to a Russian oligarch at Farnborough Airport. Is it still being held? Is there an update on the ownership of that particular aircraft?
Yeah, I've been holding it there. Actually, we know that it isn't a Russian company that holds the aircraft. It's a rather Luxembourg-registered aircraft. We are carrying out further checks before releasing it, and what we won't do is allow any Russian oligarchs to pass on that jet when it does eventually go.
So it's still being held, just to clarify?
For the time being, that's correct.
OK. One area where there seems to be growing criticism of the government is the offers being made to refugees seeking. You talked about everyone wants to help, and you rightly pointed out the graphic images we see. My understanding is that of 22,000 Ukrainians who've applied for visas in the United Kingdom, 760 have been approved. That compares rather unfavourably with Ireland, 2,200. Why such lamentable progress, Mr. Shapps?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to. I mean, everyone wants to sort of wrap our arms around and help. That's absolutely true.
Patel does, but anyway, go on.
Well, I sorry, that's just, it's not. She actually, I think she does. This country has provided the most country of any nation in the world to Ukrainian humanitarian support, £400 million from the government, from taxpayers. Plus the private
Indeed, but safe refuge is the point I'm making.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Here's an interesting thing. I don't know your lineage. Let me just. Sorry. I don't know your lineage, but I would imagine with your family name, it possibly is not starting in England. Neither is mine. Neither is Priti Patel. If we look at it, where is the welcome that used to be extended by the United Kingdom to your relatives, to my grandfather, and to Priti Patel's family?
My great grandparents came from exactly the same region, from Russia, from Poland, from Lithuania. So and sought safe refuge here when they were chased out.
Well, God bless them, but they wouldn't get it today, would they, Mr. Shapps? And it's not acceptable.
That's not the case. Let me just answer your question in full. First of all, we are extending to up to 200,000 Ukrainians through the extended family scheme with a very broad definition of family. So it can be aunts and uncles, for example. A very warm welcome to those people. 22,000 have applied, 760 have been granted so far. You'll see that number expand very quickly because we've made a lot more appointments available throughout Europe to get that visa. There were only 800 available a day. We've made 6,000 available now. So you're going to see that expand very quickly. There's a second sponsorship route for people without family ties that we'll be bringing in without specific limits on it. So we will see people come here. I think your listeners, though, will agree that we do want to know who is coming to the country. We've got, it's not beyond Putin to send people here to cause trouble.
Mr. Shapps, are you honestly telling me that a young mother cradling a baby with another infant holding her hand is a Russian sleeper who's come to Salisbury to poison people? Are you honestly suggetting that, Mr. Shapps?
No.
Right. No, so let's get a bit of logic in. We have a Home Secretary.
Hold on, Nick. We do still need to know, in order to, if apart from anything else, provide assistance, provide a welfare to help people. We do need to know who is coming into the country, and you and your listeners will accept
indeed.
that.
Of course, so it's important safety, that we. Of course.
Yeah. So it's important that we have done that. We've, as you mentioned rightly, 760 people already granted visas. I know that we're seeing the numbers out of the UN quite correctly saying 2 million people have left Ukraine. We have huge amounts of financial support going to support them.
Yes,
President Zelensky has spoken to us, and the Ukrainian government have spoken to us and made clear that they want to keep people as close to Ukraine as possible, rather than having shipped around the world, in order that people can come back. So we're supporting in the way that he would want us to support, and making these routes available, as I say, potentially for hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians. So I don't think there'll be any shortage in hospitality or generosity at all.
Mr. Shapps, I have to interrupt, sir, because we have a Home Secretary who clearly doesn't know what's going on. On Monday, she told you and other MPs that a visa centre had been set up near Calais. In fact, it's not open until later today, and it's in Lille, which is 70 miles from Calais. She's not up to the job, is she?
Well, look, I know there are.
If you were landing your aircraft 70 miles away from the airstrip you were meant to go to, you'd not be making a very bloody good job of it, would you, Mr. Shapps?
Then, of course, people have to travel across Europe in order to get to
She said it was
Calais.
in Calais. It's in Lille.
So I know first of all, there are British agency people there to assist when they get to Calais to advise. However, you're right, the centre is being set up in Lille, but also in Paris and many of the other locations, many other capitals, as you come west across Europe from Ukraine. And the idea is what we don't want to do is have a situation in Calais where we've long since had problems with criminal gangs trafficking people. We don't want to get people caught up in that. We want to get people processed, if you like, before they get to Calais, so they're able to make the crossing. And that's the intention behind this.
Finally, reminding my listeners, you served as a Minister in the International Development area. You may be aware that the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has still refused to denounce Vladimir Putin, yet we are, in Britain, about to increase our aid to India from 41 million to 55.3 million pounds. Why are we giving money to India when we have a leader there who will not denounce Putin? And shouldn't the foreign aid budget this year be the Ukrainian aid budget? Grant Shapps.
Yeah. Well, so we've got £400 million going to humanitarian aid in Ukraine and support for the Ukraine government as well. So Britain is really stepping up, as I've mentioned, the highest amount of money of any country in the world.
Right, it could be a lot more if we took the 14 billion, couldn't it?
Yeah, well, look, I want to make sure that the whole country condemns Putin. We can't have a situation where somebody.
But we're giving money to a country that won't condemn Mr. Putin. Secretary of State. India, we're increasing our taxpayers' money to India, to a country that won't condemn Vladimir Putin, Secretary of State.
Yeah, let's see what happens, Nick.
What does that mean?
Days. Well, I was going to say we're 14 days into this invasion right now.
So there could be a change.
Let's see how this develops. We of course, we want every country in the world, India included, to condemn what Putin's doing. Every country needs to reconcile their position with this, but I think democracies like India and elsewhere should be looking at what's happening in Ukraine, where an autocratic dictator has sent his troops in, and be very, very concerned about that. And we, of course, call on every country to condemn what is happening there. And actually, in terms of global coalition, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. We've certainly not seen sanctions like this against a major country anywhere else. And I look forward to that really pressurizing Putin's war machine and squeezing him, because we can't have a situation where the West is essentially paying him blood money to fund his war machine and invasion of a neighbouring country.
Grateful for your time. I'll let you get back to your endeavours. Thank you. Grant Shapps, Transport Secretary, appearing on LBC. 3 minutes after 8, news is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, Poland's offer to supply Ukraine with its fighter jets has been rejected by the US. Warsaw had proposed sending all its Soviet-era MiG planes via an American airbase in Germany. The Pentagon